We laugh. We cry. We learn. But really, what doesn't kill you makes you better at managing clients and everyone. I'm Morgan Friedman, and this is Client Horror Stories.
Hello. Welcome to the latest episode of Client Horror Stories. I'm very excited to have with me the one and only Scott Gilbert from Ontario tonight. How are you doing?
I am doing wonderful this evening. I am so excited to have a deep conversation with you and uncover some lovely facts about clients and consumers.
And dealing with difficult people, of course.
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited to hear your story. First, the audience is clamoring to know, what are you drinking? For this is how I always start the episodes tonight.
Because it was part of the very detailed prerequisite list that you put forth on how to prepare for this episode. So I used to work for a Diageo company, which is a liquor company. And that's why I like original cocktails. So this is an old fashioned. It was prepared correctly as the bourbon that I can find up here in Canada, because there is a bit of an issue getting it. But orange slice, and I made some simple syrup with a diminutive sugar cane. And so I'll be enjoying that with the orange zest that's been put into it. So we can get.
Coincidentally happens to be my favorite alcoholic drink, and I only have an Irish coffee today. So you and the Gold Star, with our alcohol in hand, tell all of us about your most challenging client horror story.
Yeah, do I want a backstory, or like what do we start with?
I personally like when in Latin we call it in medias res, like in the middle of things, jumping right into the action. So let's go for it.
So in this particular one, I am the client. So it's a bit of it, this situation is I was left with, I cannot believe I'm in this situation. How did I find myself in this situation? And no matter what I did to prevent, the circumstances around me, I was left holding the bill and having to find a way out. And there was no other solutions. As I said, no one is ever coming to save you. My particular situation is with the company that I have, and I was, trying to do what I could to progress it forward. And my business plan as a new entrepreneur was, I'll do what I do best, and I will outsource the rest. And that philosophy and theory turned to be a very poor decision on my part. And as they say in business, experience, gets the money, and money gets the experience. Well, I definitely have learned my experience from that. And so what I was outsourcing, what I was too afraid to break into, was the marketing and advertising and digital. So at that time, 6 some odd years ago, the meta ads were, pretty taking off, Google, that type of thing. But even though I had some marketing experience, the interface between them and websites and coding, it was just enough friction. I knew just not enough about it to be confident. And so I kept outsourcing. And I kept running into mistakes. And
so you started a business, and with the philosophy, do what you do best, outsource the rest, which, by the way, we're going to circle back to that at the end, because my instinct is that's the right philosophy. So I'm excited to hear how this turns out. Right. To learn, I like how you start with the end and build up to the counterintuitive conclusion.
Yeah. So that's kind of the middle of it, where I ended up, and then I had to go, find a way out with no rope in a hole. To go back to the beginning, what I was good at was, business and sales and medical.
Yes.
So I spent 10 years in the orthopedic industry, working for some fairly prominent companies that taught me some very good skills. I bridged between medical, talking to surgeons and nurses and the hospital staff, and then the general public. And so that was kind of actually my expertise, was literally having one foot in both these realms. And during that time, I met my now wife, who is a plastic surgeon. So I've got maybe more perimedical type of experiences. And I had developed some skin issues. Like it's pigmentation. I'm in my mid-30s and I'm wearing a hat to hide because I feel sheepish about the way my skin looks. And so I went looking for some solutions for pigmentation. And with all my medical, expertise, meaning a little more than the average consumer off the street is going to have, and my network, I really struggled to find solutions. And I even got fast tracked in the Canadian system through my network to see a dermatologist because this is not a life or limb situation for them. It's not cancer or anything like that. I kind of got like brushed through and they just said, here's a pamphlet. They'll take care of you at the front door. And I kind of felt sold. I was like, I've been buying the expensive skincare. It doesn't do anything. I didn't get any explanation. And so out the door I went. And so that was kind of me, like, with knowing that I had probably a little bit of an edge to be able to find these solutions and not finding it for myself. When my wife actually had graduated from her fellowship and opened up a practice, as me being a rep, I said I would help her out. She takes care of skin cancers. I said, I'll talk to the reps. You're going to have some sunscreen. You got people with pigmentation issues. I will, they're going to need to be supported. They're going to look to you for answers. I will talk and bring in some support for you. And it was during that, I just talking to the standard medical skincare lines, which many people will know. I was given some samples and 2 to 3 weeks later, lo and behold, my pigmentation fell off and went down the sink. And I was like, okay, so this really worked. It wasn't that expensive. Why didn't I know about it? Why couldn't I find it? And why isn't everybody selling this stuff? And that was my epiphany of that there's a gap here. There's no reason why people go to a drugstore and spend money to buy something that doesn't work when somewhere else down the street, probably not as advertised, not as market, there is something that actually does work.
It just works.
And my epiphany going backwards to that dermatologist, they were literally giving me the information up for the solution, but without the time to explain it, I didn't even know I was getting given a different option. So that was kind of the epiphany, and that's how I started. And I was just like, if there was more people like me that has issues with their skin, whether it be acne, redness, rosacea, pigmentation, they all feel a little sheepish. Like think of the industry that is makeup and how many billions of dollars it is. That's how many people are looking for a solution that are, So I dove headfirst and I opened up a med spa and I'm like, I'm going to solve this business issue as to why these people that have these solutions are not offering what the clients require or understand as their problem or their solution. And I was like, so that's when I dove in and I'm like, I'm going to solve this. So I'll work on business. I'll work on the sales. I've got this medical background to kind of navigate and drive the public through to the doctors or the practitioners to get their services. And I got to figure out, I'm just going to do it based on education because that's really this gap. Well, it turns out that people don't really want to read educational stuff on their own. And that's where there was this gap of marketing. So I'm going to outsource my marketing. And so that was kind of the beginning of it. I was a few short on things as far as the ability to interface with this new world of digital marketing, and I outsourced to make a website, which went horribly wrong. So I just donated $7,000, and it went one way, and in the end,
you donated to the website designer.
I mean, it was so bad that I did ask for a refund from the CEO, and the CEO said, and I was like, look, it's going to cost me like $500 to $1,000 to fix this minimum. I didn't know. And he was like, oh, here you go. And then I was like, wow, he asked for that so quickly. He gave it to me that I realized that I should have asked for the whole thing, not knowing. Again, I knew so little about how badly it was that I couldn't even ask for a right number. So that was my own ignorance. And so the next step was we closed for COVID.
So actually, before we get to the COVID twist in the story, I'll ask you a question and give you a second to drink your old fashioned. We have about 100 episodes of client horror stories, and what's interesting about this one so far is you're kind of on the other side of the table. Usually, it's the people like, I made a website for someone for $7,000. And he was such a disaster and did everything wrong. At the end, I even gave him back 500 of the 7,000. that the format is usually learning about from the other side. But what's interesting here is you're able to like see both sides and understand the narrative of what happened in the website case before we move to what happened in COVID. Yep. Like, what do you think made it, like, what did you do wrong as the client to make it go so badly?
Yeah, and it's sheerly ignorance. It's always an unknown, which is going to be the reason why I say don't outsource is because you can't outsource unless you understand how to manage it. So if you don't know the KPIs, if you don't know what the input and the output expectation from the input is, then you have no feedback loop. So you just have a guess of like this, I expected something to happen on the backside and it's not happening. And then, you have to like kind of figure it out. And then when something is ultimately pushed, usually financial, like I have to make more money. I need more clients. I got to do something different. I got to, we're going to shake it up. You don't really know where you stand because you don't have the knowledge. And
I see. So
down to.
I see. So I want to like translate that into my language, which is, let's say, in the example of website design, if someone that truly knows nothing about a website other than like, hey, I've seen and I've used websites, they're cool. If someone that really knows nothing about it, hire someone, hey, make me a website for whatever, my plastic surgery practice, whatever. The person that truly knows nothing could very reasonably assume, oh, of course the website includes scheduling and this, and then when people contact it, of course it goes to into some sort of tracking system. But from the professional's website, they're like, dude, those are completely different things. You just asked for this one technical little thing. So as a result, it's ripe for deep misunderstandings.
Absolutely. And I know for a fact, just based on the number of people that I talk to, that I ask a significant amount more questions, knowing what a plausible outcome could be. And then does this do this? Does this do this? This? Most people aren't going to ask those questions. And even with everything that I dug into it and all the research I was doing, I still wasn't able to see, the train wrecks that were about to happen. It had to happen. I had to own it. This was all on me. And so, I mean, just to give you an example of how bad the website was, there was a VSL that was on, and then there was this header that was like on the VSL somewhere.
Wait, what is a VSL?
So a video sales letter. I had a
video sales letter.
I had a video of like walking into the clinic and some nice just general B-roll going on.
I know what you mean by a video sales letter. I just didn't know the VSL acronym.
Oh, there we go. So that's the nomenclature used here all the time. And there's a problem right there, is that I'm using an acronym and I should never use an acronym because it's poor communication. And that's part of the problem. I had to learn all this stuff because I didn't know. And so the example of this image, this video that's going across my screen on my banner, and then there's some words that were on it, and I asked it to be put above the video, and a couple more things above the video. And what he did was, as my editor that was working, I think I got the person who was just hired, and like, okay, well, here's a good client for you. So he put all of them stacked on top of each other this way. So you couldn't read any of the words. You couldn't watch the video. You couldn't. And I was just like, yeah, so that technically that is over as the same thing as over. It could be over. And these were these, like, I didn't expect that this type of communication and there was no language barrier whatsoever. And the amount of corrections I was having to put forth, like weeks at a time, just to get a standard thing done. I had to move on. And I think the clincher is the fact when I did talk to the actual owner of the company about my problems, and all of my concerns are documented because they're all via email. And he was just like very thankful to hit the eject button, give me the minimum amount. I think he was ready to write in the full ticket. And I just didn't ask for much because I didn't know enough. But it was terrible. So that was my first interlude into digital marketing and a website. And the next step was COVID hit. So I went from a clinic that was to my wife's surgical practice. So I had 60 people foot traffic minimum every week, or 120. And then COVID hit and everything went to virtual, including medicine. So now I didn't have a digital footprint. I wasn't relying on it heavily based on my business model. And now I had to completely change everything, and I needed to get a business model. So the first thing I did was jump and take one of the first drag and drop editors that I could find and build a website. And so in the end of that, it wasn't the same type that they were doing. I think it was a WordPress one originally. And I think I took a drag and drop. I think it was Wix. But nonetheless,
I remember Wix.
I was able to create an actual website. I was able to create something more than I paid $6,500 for. And so I got it going. And so that was step one. And the funny thing is, if I went backwards in time, after building the website, I would have never ran into that problem. I would have ejected that digital editor like on week one, knowing what was possible, knowing what should happen if I'm paying money for it. And we would have got a new person in and probably would have been just fine. And that shows you just the lack of knowledge and the expectation and what should be.
I see. So what you're also saying is that with this example of web design, there's something that are so easy and trivial, but just go into an editor and you just change this one word. But from the outsider, it feels a little bit magical, and therefore it feels complex and expensive. Absolutely. And you need a whole team, and editors in order to do it.
Yeah. And they did a really good job. They had an awesome onboarding person. It was kind of like I would say it's a receptionist, but it's not. This was like a team lead that directed traffic, like an air traffic controller. And she was phenomenal. And so she was the sale. And she's also what calmed the waters and did everything. And so it's like if I did it again without the knowledge, would I have been able to vet them any better than I did to avoid the situation? And I was like, until I built the website, no. And so that's where I was. Nonetheless, now we're 6 months past. Now we're a year into COVID. We have a website. I did spend time. I got another digital marketer with the website. This is my second digital marketer now. And this one is not to do the website. It was to do advertisement, because we had to advertise. We're in a second story. We're not storefront. We're not street front. We have to pull people in. And so digital media was the way to go at this point in time. And I was just too afraid, just like the website design. I didn't want to take it on. It looked like too many numbers and I had to code, and something I was too afraid to do. And so I was given this marketer, and this was a great company, except that they were like for Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Freightliner. Like, this was a huge company. I'm a little tiny small business. I do remember having a consultation with them, and they're talking about the thickness of the gauge of paper that my invoices should be printed on to hand to my clients. I'm just like, I just want somebody to come through the door. I'm happy with that. And what happened in this situation, which was different from the last one, because I didn't end up doing marketing with them, I was doing website, was I didn't know that information that flows through my digital media account, I should be privy to that information.
Yes.
As opposed to behind a black wall where I'm just writing a big check every month and I have no idea where it goes. It goes through their agency account, and as the ads are placed through them, and I'm the third party at this point in time.
I see.
And so it started out good up until when things need to be improved upon. I don't have any data. I haven't learned anything. And I'm on the outside looking into my own stuff. And so eventually I did end that. And, this is probably...
So by the way, I just want to make two comments on that. First, it's really important to, as you learned, to never outsource your own learning, because no matter how great the agency is, like, you are the one that needs to learn. And on the individual level as the founder, CEO, but once you build up a team, the team needs to learn and retain the knowledge, this documentation, processes, and things like ARs, and just outside teams. You don't get that by definition.
I completely agree. Fail first, fail fast. When you've learned it, then you can outsource. But you can't outsource the learning. You're absolutely right. Yeah. That's the crux of it all.
Another observation I want to make is I love your detail that they're talking about the thickness of the paper, and you're like, I don't give a fuck about that. I just want clients. And what's interesting about that is so often I see advice given at the wrong level of scale. And what I mean by that is people are like, okay, we need to figure out digital ads, using digital ads, while on the other side, they're focused on like really, really small little details that are of no interest to anyone outside. Yeah, you figure out the thickness of the paper. I just want foot traffic.
Yeah, and or they just talk too much. It's over the head. You have to unpack the information at the speed at which that they can ingest it. And that's such an important thing. You can say, well, I told them that. Well, if they don't remember it, and if you talk to 5 clients and all 5 clients don't remember the fact that you're doing this SOP, that you're giving them this information, then it's not upon them. You have missed the appropriate way to communicate that step. So find a better way to do it. And that's an important thing, even with my clients and learning as a clinic. If I am giving this, just here, you're signing up to do a laser treatment, and here is this rap sheet of all the things you're not supposed to do. Go in the sun, don't do retinol, don't put on this cream before you have a laser treatment. And then, 3 out of the 6 people that come in all did one of those things, and that's a repeatable thing. It's not the client's fault. It's yours. You have to change your system.
By the way, I want to get another mini lesson from that, which is interesting that like also just I can't get over them talking about the thickness of the paper. By the way, I'm like an obsessive nerd, and to me, dude, anything the more important is the thicker the paper it is, and I live by it. So I totally get those guys, but I also get your point. You're like, dude, like that's your job to like figure it out. Like, who cares? Like I'm paying you to think about that. But what's interesting about that is that's such a level of tiny little obsessive detail that you only find in like the big, huge, expensive, like we have so much budget for this project. We're gonna obsess over the tiny little observations no one else even thought of, like the thickness paper. So it's interesting when you look for an agency, you have to find an agency that's not good, but an agency that's good for you. And usually the smaller of a client you are for the agency, the worse you'll be treated. So it's usually better to go to the small agency where you're one of their biggest clients, as opposed to the huge agency where you're one of their smallest clients.
I completely agree. And if for somebody like, if I was a multi-million dollar, like $100 million business, and say I am the Ritz-Carlton, the thickness of my paper when giving my invoice, when somebody is checking out of this, fancy hotel, that matters. And it's in line with how they want to deliver an above, not just, delivery of their service, that attention to detail is actually what they're known for. And so that would be a fine match for that. For me, I needed the lessons more than anything else. I needed them to tell me the basics of stuff, and that type of information was just clutter for me anyways.
Yes.
So, and that's it. And I say this was not a bad relationship. This was just we weren't appropriate for each other. I was too small budget for them, and they were too hands-on, I will say, for me. And in the sense that their clients probably weren't asking for their budget. They probably didn't even care. And for me, I'm just like, so what is my $7,000 a month doing for stuff? How do I fix something when it goes wrong? And I had no metrics whatsoever. I didn't know how much went to advertising, how much went to their creative team, how much went to just a monthly stipend that they just wanted to take, or some PR that I had no idea about. These were all lessons that I was missing. And so in the end, that became the end of our relationship, is that I had to take something over and I had to do something myself to make sure that I was going to survive. And I now 18 months later was basically starting from 18 months previous, because I knew more than I did when I hired them. And it's because they were so good and they were a friend and related that I was just kind of like, okay, great. That works until it doesn't work. And then,
by the way, you actually threw out a little point 5 minutes ago that I'm slow, it's late here. That I just clicked, but it's also a really good point for the listeners, which is you didn't realize that you should own the data. And that's a point that also has never come up in an episode before. We're now at episode about 100, and I always try to get a new learning in every episode. And that is such a good point. The way I usually, because I know a lot of digital marketers, and I run a large community of digital marketers as well. And the way I usually break it down and explain it to people is there are two ways to pay for digital marketing services. Either you're paying for digital marketing services, or you're paying just for the results, like you're paying per lead, for example. And if it's in the first category, like morally, ethically, usually legally, you should own all the data. But if it's in the second category, then usually you don't. Like, dude, we'll give you names and email addresses and pay us $5 per name and email address. Cool. You get no data. You just get an email. You just get a name and email for $5 per pop, and like that's it. And they have their own websites and sources and so on. But when you're hiring a full service digital marketing agency, we'll manage it, CRM website, doing all of that, like analytics. It's really important that not just you have access, but it's you own the accounts. You want to do it under your Google Ads account, not their account. So you can
so
change.
So important.
Exactly.
Yeah. And again, ignorance is what cost me, because I didn't know. I didn't know to ask. And it wasn't until I had to go source another person that they were just like, what? You didn't?
Yeah.
Where's your pixel? Where's your information? Where's your history? Where's your anything? I was like, I don't know. It's like, so that for almost 18 months, I have ended up with no known information coming back. And that was an eye opener. There's the question. The unknown is always the hardest one to answer.
Yeah. What's good about this example is digital marketers happen to know a whole lot about it, but it's a really subtle case because it's such a great example, because no human being who is not a digital marketer or deeply involved in the digital marketing industry would even think of asking, wait, is the Google Analytics account technically registered under me or under you? Like it feels like such a minor, little unimportant technical detail, but that detail screws you over if you ever want to leave that agency.
Yeah.
Which gives them
that's exactly
this insane leverage over you.
Yep. Now you're stuck. Well, or when you find out, you're really stuck because you're just, oh man, I got to start all over. I got to pay for all that again. And I'm going to say, these are all the good relationships thus far that I had along this journey on digital marketing. These are all like 100% my own ignorance. There wasn't anything that was malicious by any stretch on this. It was just the time it takes to learn, and you have to make the mistakes. And unfortunately, these mistakes took more time and more money, but they weren't, malicious by any.
By the way, like I know a lot of digital marketers, and I'm deep in the industry. And my take as an insider is, if they don't give you the data and you're paying just for leads, if you're paying per lead, then that's cool. They're morally fine. But if you're paying them like a monthly honorarium fee, and they're doing digital marketing services for you, and they're not giving, they're not using your pixel and tracking into your account and so on, then they're acting immorally according to the professional code of conduct of digital marketers. So I think there's something bad going on there.
I would say that they're stealing your information or your proprietary client information. Like if the pixel is running through them, all that traffic, and you're not getting that, and you're paying for it. So you're paying for something and not getting the advantage for it. I would say that's theft in a digital sense. And so and people don't know that.
By the way, to like even nerd out on it even more, I'll point out, because often when you confront these people, hey, you're being unethical, they're like, no, our pixel, because we have hundreds of millions of users. Let's be aggregated so we get cheaper prices for the remarketing ads. They have their justifications with big letters, with big words. And my response to that is, technically it is trivial to run 2 pixels, for example. So you want to run your own, but also put one under an account under the other person's name. So they also have their own account. Fully kosher and technically easy. One line of code to have 1 pixel that goes to this Facebook tracking pixel and one that goes to that Facebook tracking pixel.
It kind of reminds me of like a credit score. Like if you have no credit, it's worse than bad credit. And so if everything was running through your pixel was credit, like a credit score, and then suddenly 18 months later, you wanted to take out another credit card and the bank goes, sorry, you don't have any credit. You don't have any score whatsoever because all of your history just went to somebody else. So they own it. And so that's kind of the way it is. You want the historical evidence that you exist, that you have good and bad people coming through that you could refine so that you can always get better.
I had never thought of that metaphor before, but I love it.
Yeah.
Very, very accurate.
There we go. So now we're going to get into what was my epiphany? All right. And
I'm excited for the good stuff. It's already been great.
So now I've now got to redo my website. COVID is now on the backside. Our government has now starting to write checks everywhere. I applied and I got some money for a digital grant as a Canadian business. And so I'm like, it's for redoing a website. And there's a lot of good local businesses that have done startups to also take this money and do good work with it and help small businesses. And so I found somebody, and I was having so much good fun time with these people. They were professional. They knew their stuff. They owned their mistakes. The CEO, a young woman who was like on her way to probably a 40 under 40 type of enterprise. And I was having, this is the best experience I've had as a tertiary business and outsourcing thus far, especially in the media side of things. And so the relationship went really well, and they were doing some pretty good stuff with my website build. I still didn't have the other side of that equation, which was the marketing side to go now direct traffic towards this brand new website that I had with all of its bells and whistles. And so I was asking if they knew anybody, and they were like, well, actually, we can do that too. And I was like, oh, well, great. Not only do I have a great relationship and I've got one good outcome, but you also do the one thing that I don't do. And I have not been able to find that. I'm like, please, this is great. I like how this is going. And so this all started, I think, on our path was probably in the early fall, maybe in the September, October, so about almost this time of year actually. And we're heading into, so that's the busiest season for us in aesthetics, because you can do lasers, there's tans are gone, running in the Christmas, it typically is only about 3 weeks, the December, and then it goes into a lull in January for a little while where people have to line their pocketbooks again before they start spending money. So it was a great time for them to take over. I got this website. Here we go. And it started out okay, or at least the first month went pretty well. And then it very much died off. And like, I'm pretty small. So like the number of times a phone ring is typically like, that's kind of my feedback loop. Like, is the phone ringing? What are we doing? And the one things that I did know was that the media was far better. Like, they came in and they did some photography, and I knew they had a good media team. The scripting was far better. Like, this was a better product. And yet after that first kind of 3 weeks, everything started to peter off. And I was like, okay, I don't really know. Again, my ignorance is the fact that I'm now looking at the back of Meta now that I actually have some data, but I don't know how to interpret it. And it seems like the numbers are going down, but I know that what is being posted is far better. Just as a standard marketing, I did have marketing. I got a business degree in school, although digital marketing not the same as what I took it way back in the day. But I can tell that the nuts and bolts of these pieces are like, this is far better than I was doing before. And even with that full service thickness of the paper, they were getting better results. even though I didn't know what was going on. And I was very confused because certain things were great, and yet the results were going down. And so I would call, and I would be having, and again, when it's your business and it's your money on the line and it's your house on the line, and you're like, all the stresses that happen with running a small business, the buck's up with you. You have to find answers. And so you don't just let it be. Now, I had a good relationship, so they would have been given a bit of a longer leash. And I started asking questions. And it wasn't like, they'll try something, of course, then you got to set it out. They're going to do, they're going to do this change. They would set it out. You have to wait a week. Next week, not working, new change, set it out. Everything seemed to be like, okay, that makes a logical sense from what I would know from marketing. And nothing was changing though. So now we go through October. Now we're in the November. And we're starting to get run through our existing pipeline. So now the phone is really going down, which is another sign, by the way. So as a client in this situation, what I would learn later on after this is the fact that without marketing per se, or something in marketing going correct, I was still going down, which means my product wasn't good enough either. But I wouldn't know that until later on. That's another lesson to pick up on. But I kept pressing, and so I was shortened the time frame of which I was having communication, and it came down to like every couple of days I requested that myself and their team were having a meeting, and literally I was still positive. I was still like, look, the creative's good, the writing's good, this is good, the phone's doing this, the emails are doing this. There's a disconnect, like a circuit. I'm sure if there's some little switch, we're going to get it as a team. I'm positive, professional, and we're going to knock this out of the park. I was very positive until the second week of December. I have 1 week left of December before we close for the break, and then we open back up in January, which is typically one of our slowest months, probably the second slowest of the year. And December the year before was our busiest month of the year on the previous marketer. So even in 3 weeks, it was still our busiest month, and we had done some really good things. This year, on the second week, my staff could have played cards on the floor of our clinic, and nobody would have been disturbed at walking through it because we had nobody.
Wow.
The phones were dead. We are literally at a dead stop. And I call the CEO, and I'm just like, we got to have a talk. And so we have a video conference. And I'm like, look, there's something wrong. Like, I know there's something wrong. I didn't know my metrics well enough. So my feedback loop was very delayed. It's just like, if there's no phone calls, that means the ads didn't work of something, or something in the communication, the publication of these advertisements and marketing was not effective. I knew the media was good. I knew the creatives were good. I knew the writing was good. I didn't know any of the other aspects of the components and the data. But I was like, look, this has gone on long enough. I've been doing weekly meetings with your staff. And actually, the previous week's meeting with the staff was, they said, you know what? Google is not working. Everyone's over on Meta. So we're going to jump all fish going over the Meta. And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm happy that something is being identified that it's not working. You're telling me, and we got a whole different side to go to, because I think they were mostly on Google side. Now we're going over to Meta. And then they showed me the Meta the following week, and they spent $750 in an ad and got 0 leads. Leads, not clients, not bookings. Leads were exactly 0. And me not going, I was like, okay, the good side about this is we know it's not working. Throw that one out. That's a definitive test. But okay, chop it out. Let's keep funneling down. It was the following week after that I called this meeting with the CEO, and she got on the line, and she had a bit of a blank look. I'm like, you're gonna have to come true with me. There's something I'm missing, and I'm the only one that doesn't know. And she kind of paused for a while, and she was very reluctant to let go. And she kind of exasperated and said, we accidentally used the wrong credit card to pay for advertisements with Google on your account. and Google has flagged your website and your account as fraudulent. And I was like, oh, that doesn't sound good. And she said, no. I was like, okay. So does that mean that no advertisements are allowed to go like from Google to my website? And she goes, no. Okay.
Wow.
How long ago did this happen? She said about 3 months ago. So my entire busiest season up until this point, I actually was having meetings 2 to 3 times a week, up from once a
Wow.
week with her staff, trying to problem solve, pulling my hair out, working so hard side by side with them. And all of the reasons that the data was like devoid of information, to say it, was the fact that it actually wasn't published. And so now my pipeline was gone.
Wow.
I had a couple of days left before we shut down, and only to open up with the second slowest month of the year. And I was like, if I have to start over today, if I had a marketing agency today that could actually do what it needed to be done, it would probably take me 3 months to build back up again. And so it probably costs hundreds of thousands of dollars in loss. I mean, we were down to nothing.
Wow.
So we had nothing as far as run rate. We had no cash flow. We were completely squeezed out because we've been slowly being drained. And I asked, like, why was I not informed about this? This is my Google account. This is my website. And she said, looked right at me and just said, we just wanted to keep it under our hats.
Wow.
And I let it sit there, and I realized they have bridged all of their website clients that they had developed, and they had bridged them over to this brand new stream of income, which was digital marketing, which that they were outsourcing to a third-party company and taking the arbitrage. And it was the third-party company that they outsourced to, cheap labor that used the wrong credit card on a number of accounts. And so they knew as soon as one person found out, they were going to lose their whole division. And so their own ad account as an agency was apparently also frozen and mixed up in this. And they were trying to unravel it without anyone knowing, so they didn't lose their entire wing of their business. And so I don't know, it almost cost me my business. I probably would have been under if I didn't have good support. I don't know who else would have been at that time. I mean, this is also just post-COVID. Like, this is the first break year that we've kind of had a foot not on our neck. And there I was sitting, and she was just like, and there was no like, I'm sorry. It was just, so what do you want me to do now? Like, did not care whatsoever. She was just like,
there was no, I'm sorry.
And it was just like, well, this is, I want my money back that I paid you, but that doesn't even come close to the cost. The opportunity cost of all the pipeline and everything else that's gone does not even come close to a marketing spend. Or probably, even my revenue losses were in the tens of thousands of dollars, and that doesn't even mean the future losses of building it back up again. So all of that, the marketing cost for her particular part was pretty small. I did get that back, but like it was touch and go, and so that all came down to, again, my ignorance of not knowing the feedback loop, and again having a good relationship, and me being, I would say, just blind faith of, this is a good relationship. You're like me. We're going to do good by each other, and just agreeing with that. But I don't think in a million years I would have ever expected somebody to bury this hatchet for 3 months and not let it be known. But yeah, it almost crushed my entire business and the staff and everything else, and the stresses that go along with that.
Wow. So incredible story. I have a couple of comments first. As a digital marketer,
Yeah.
it breaks my heart. And Also, as someone who runs a digital marketing community, I've seen these sorts of stories from all sides before. It's unfortunately too common. A surprising detail in that story is that the owner didn't own the problem, because you're saying that when they made your website, they were like top-notch, first-rate. And what I found, the first-rate, top-notch firms tend to own their mistakes as well. So that was interesting. And related to that, I want to point out how weird business incentives can be, because they have this, they do this thing very well. They make websites and they want to make more money, and they think, oh, we can upsell this other service and we can just hire two people to do it through a different firm, and to use your word, arbitrage, earn arbitrage on the difference. And like, that's such a normal business model. You hear it all the time. It's like kind of like MBA 101, way you make money 101, arbitrage, but it actually fucks up people's incentives in so many ways. Because like, now you're paying top dollar for something top quality, when really it's some guy making 25 cents an hour that is just so naive and ignorant, likely without processes or protocols or QA or checks and balances, that does this massively huge mistake that fucks over your domain effectively permanently, I might add.
I had to actually get it sourced out, and it was under review for a while. I was able to get that back again, but it took months. But absolutely, like, all of that stuff was a black eye, and I had to deal with it.
Yeah, so it's often business owners are in difficult positions as well, because you want to grow your revenue by and like making websites to website and digital marketing and hire other people to do it is like, feels like the most obvious thing. It's just really, really, really hard to do well in order to avoid these sorts of disasters.
And if you think about it, like, they were doing it the hard way. Digital marketing at that point in time was probably pretty easy to bring in, and it had a very high cash flow. And so they were doing the hard work, which was like building all these websites with very good technical abilities, but their continuation product was probably pretty minimal. Like, updating the code on a WordPress site was pretty minimal. So they wanted marketing.
They wanted the recurring revenue.
The recurring, yeah, that's exactly right. So they've got their core, and then they wanted to bridge them over into their current, maintenance and recurring,
and then there's
revenue stream.
And there's another interesting point here, which is there's this, because of how brands work and branding works, there's this natural human instinct to think, oh, company X is great at this thing, therefore they're probably great at this other thing as well. Absolutely.
Yeah,
but just because Toyota is great at making cars, that doesn't mean Toyota is great at making like batteries or bars or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely right. But that's exactly how, trust and authority works. Like, those are the influences by Dr. Robert Cialdini, right? Like, trust and authority was built, and that is the blank check that they get.
Cialdini.
I think it's in Cialdini, correct? Yes, it is. You're absolutely
right. It's usually pronounced Cialdini. The CI in Italian is a this is the pretentious asshole in me. Always.
No, that's good. It's funny because I always say it with the G. I don't know where I heard it that way, and because I listened to all of his books, so I always do it that way. And he gets quoted so much, but those influences are so powerful, you never think twice about them. And so that's why they are also important to put into your marketing and put into your sales processes and stuff like that inherently.
By the way, I also want to point out what's interesting about the owner of the firm acting this way. And like, we didn't tell you because we wanted to keep it under our hats. Like, what did she think was going to happen? Yeah, you're being charged for all these months, and like without providing the basic service, and thought you wouldn't like get angry and demand all the money back. It's incredible to me how often I see this pattern where when there's a problem, so many people think that it's better to keep it under their hat for as long as possible, as opposed to on day one, dealing with it directly and strongly.
If they had owned it, I would have been the biggest supporter of them until the day we died. Honestly, if they were like, we fucked up, like this is a massive mistake right here. And as a human, I would be like, it's a massive mistake on like what the outcome of it, but really this was just a small human error. Somebody used the wrong credit card that was not responsible enough or was too at an arm's distance to the actual problem. And it was just a human error. But the fact that they didn't own it and it prolonged for 3 months, and I wouldn't have found out. I would have ended up just closing the doors without it if I didn't press. If it wasn't the person who was so, I cast so many questions, and I just wanted to problem solve this. I was like, I can get through this, even with your team, through your team. I will get your team to the solution to help me. I was not willing to let it go. That's the only reason I think I broke through. That's the only reason I got that call. Otherwise, I probably would have been buried with my company.
So there's a lesson on the power of persistence as well.
And I think that's the underlying of all entrepreneurship is like, you just don't stop. That's what, they say pursue your passions. And it's not because you want to do something that's enjoyable. You want to do something that when you no longer want to keep going, you keep going. And you have to appreciate it so much. And so I refuse to die. And I think that's how I kept going. And it's the funny thing is, and this is a 3 some odd year, probably 3.5 year journey at this point in time. I still didn't know how to market. I had a better business.
That's right.
I still had all of these lessons to learn. So there's the lesson, like right there is the reason I kept coming up with the same problem is because I was outsourcing my lessons, to your point. And so when I say don't outsource it's because you have to learn before you can manage. And I want everyone to fail. And the next phase of my business is where everything changed. And it's where I took on all responsibility and the buck stopped for everything with me. I will just outsource and do what I do best, probably stay also within my comfort zone, was not going to get my company, my employees, everything else where it needed to be. And my entire goal was to solve the business concern for this industry that was not presenting the problem and solutions to the clients so they could go, oh, you can help me. And that was my whole goal. And here I was like, I didn't know how to talk. I didn't know how to attract a client. I still had not learned the one thing. Actually, I had reversed into the exact thing I set out to solve, which was short-term selling, a treatment, short-term marketing, even outsourcing to a marketing company, having them take your menu and say, I'll just optimize for what your menu is. Problem is that nobody knows what the Clear and Brilliant, the Halo, the Morpheus 8, whatever it may be. They don't know what these things are, so they can't fix the problem with pigmentation, redness, acne, scars. So I still hadn't solved it. Actually, I don't even think I even cracked it at all. And so the next phase was, it's on me. I did find somebody that was able to execute my plan and work with me until I was trained enough to take it over. And the end result of that, not only did we scale, and so I agreed to, at the end of 5 years, our lease was up. And I agreed with my wife. I was like, look, I set out to do this thing. I have a timeline for this. I hadn't gotten there yet. So this is about 4 years in. I was like, at the end of 5 years, if we want to, do a different outcome, let's do it. But we're deciding today and we're working towards that goal. And so at that point in time, I had taken over the reins of all of my marketing, not only my marketing, but I took on a new CRM and I built it all out from scratch personally. I created all of the lead magnets personally and put all of the messaging in to the CRM. I woke up at 4 a.m. I was there with my dog in my bed, and I worked until my kids were up, building the stuff out. and then I would go to work, put the kids to bed, and then I work until 10, 11 at night. And I would repeat that. And I repeated that for about 3 months. And in December, I took over and launched my own marketing on my last phase of our business. And the outcome from that was going from marketing treatments to taking one package of treatments that solved the most common person that comes through our door, the person that we treat the best, that we get the best outcome for, and I reverse engineered how to bring that person in, bring them through the hoops, get a result, and blow their socks off so much and value that they would send me a referral. And that was the outcome of, instead of marketing to everyone, I was like, I'm gonna market to one person, and I'm going to learn and be so good at bringing them in the door, and I'm going to be so good at converting that sale, and I'm going to be so good at treating them and delivering communication in ways that had not been done before, solving every frequently asked question before it even came up, when it comes up, that by the time they had finished something that probably every other skin client company could do, they were blown away. And my cost of acquisition from having a clicked to closed method, from doing it all myself, I went from almost like $498 cost of acquisition, but $498 marketing cost of acquisition. So that was, so not even a full acquisition, didn't include like human resource costs and things like that in there. And I went down to $19. And in this industry, that's a little unheard of. And that's because I was literally getting a referral up front, and I was getting a referral on the back. And that was the dedication of a marketing through sales, through fulfillment, from referral back to the front again. And it just kept cycling through. So I was able to do that before we closed the doors, and we literally doubled our business in the 5 months that I did marketing and sales. We doubled our business, and we exited on our 5 years, and that's what I have now to help people, is the system that we created so that other clinics don't keep running the same rat race that the industry tends to do.
Wow, I love the story on multiple levels. As a digital marketer, this is a particularly painful, possibly even emotional story for me, having seen variations of the story on all sides. And I like your lesson that no one's ever going to solve your problems as well as you do.
Exactly.
And you just need to just dive in to the problems wherever they're. And there's just lots of variations of that. Like when you hire professional services firms, no matter how expensive and good they are, they'll never care as much as you do. Maybe you hire a gazillion-dollar lawyer who's the most amazing lawyer in the world, but even the most amazing lawyer in the world, you get him for an hour a week or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
He's never going to care and obsess and put the time and energy and love the way you did in this case.
Yeah, and I think the lessons I took on, like, could I hire out marketing right now and be successful? Yes. Because I understood what they had to do, like what they were trying to do, what information they required from me to do their job. But also the gaps that happen between, a hand up and the lead nurture. The gap that is often, this is a thing for all of those people for those clients that become, it's your fault that you're not bringing in the clients in and doing the stuff. Because half my problem was the fact that my product wasn't good enough. And when I owned the communication from click to close, my feedback loop was my sales. So whatever was coming up in my sales was actually what I ended up using in my marketing. That was the nomenclature that my clients were using. That was their problems and their words. But when I outsourced it from the beginning, none of that stuff was ever made back to the marketing. they just took my menu and they decided this is how I'll make this a very nice menu, and then I'll market the menu. And so that was a huge epiphany. Just the congruency of, oh, you answered an ad for pigmentation, and then the phone call afterward. Oh, so Jane Smith, we're coming in for pigmentation. We're really good at, but taking care of that, and then taking, all of the Cialdini's influences and purposely creating not a sales system, like a sales process, so that like my text message for your confirmation also had, the 5-star review, not leaving it the chance. Did they see our 5-star reviews? No. Did they know we have a plastic surgeon here? Did they know we have this here? And force feeding all of those trust, authority, and social pieces all the way through and right into taking I'll give a nod because he just launched his own book, but Hormozi, and I took this from his very first gym launch book, which I don't think most people even know he wrote. But I walked into every single consult with a Perrier, and I cracked it and I put it on the table and I poured the glass and I sat it right beside them because I wanted that reciprocity to be known. And so my entire system was dedicated for only one person. And that is really how the efficiency just went up so much when we stopped marketing to everyone and brought somebody through. But all of those efficiencies only happened by owning the entire pipeline. And now if I outsourced it, I would know exactly what the feed back, and I would know exactly what the ask back. But until I did it myself, I didn't understand what these, what Meta was trying to do. I didn't know what Google was trying to do. I didn't know what the email nurturing, was supposed to provoke, or what the options were until I built up the CRM. I didn't even know it had these options, or it could do these phone calls, or, create this stuff. So it's really, until you walk the mile in their shoes, that's how I learned. And, I probably would have been one of the worst clients because I asked so much of people. But at the same time, it's because it was my ignorance. Is how do I get around this without actually doing it? And the thing is, you got to do it. And then you work really well with people if you actually jump through the hoops.
Powerful lessons. Your marketing conclusions are amazing, and as a experienced and successful digital marketer, completely on point. My way of making that point in a simplified way to my clients is that every little thing in the product is an opportunity for marketing, and you have to obsess over every little thing. And like, you have no idea about the little things I've obsessed over. In the same vein as what you're talking about, I hide Easter eggs everywhere. I hide Easter eggs in almost every terms and conditions. Like even the boring legalistic language.
Yeah.
I once had a company I was doing marketing for and growing. They had custom software, and the way part of their software works is when a user was created, it would like auto generate them a password and like email them here's your auto generated password AQ9876 and so on. I came up with this idea. I actually thought in the shower one night to say, what if instead of like the password was just like random letters and numbers together, we took the names of models. So it was like Christine Brinkley, Brinkley 8976, and just like doing like making it funny. Oh my God, that's hysterical. I can't believe they did that. That literally the random password generation is an opportunity to charm your clients.
That's exactly it. There's so much stuff that is right there.
Exactly. Every tiny little interaction, even the little things you aren't thinking about.
We had it in ours for the sales. Like one of the common things was the standard thing for a medical is they give them this rap sheet of all of this medical jargon that they're supposed to take care of, as I mentioned earlier, before their treatment. Well, it was obvious that it was just too much at the wrong time. And so I would always send it out. We give them that piece of paper. And then that night, they're going to lose it before they get to the car.
Right.
And so that was a text-based message. And then I would send them a PDF with pictures. So all of the pictures of all the problems. I was like, there's a pregnant person. There's somebody that's got like, a sunburn is this, these crazy, and it was like, oh, it was a completely different format. The next day, they would get a video with audio of all of the same things, because some people learn by text, some people learn by image, and some people as audio and video. And every piece of communication we did from now on had all three of those. And because of a CRM, you can do some fun things. Half the people that we talked to had already purchased thousands of dollars in skincare, and they weren't using it because it was too complicated. They didn't know what to do. And after they went home, they forgot what the person had said. Because we were doing a very streamlined delivery of a certain package of products, I associated a bare minimum package for them. And then I took pictures of the bottle. I took pictures of what it looks like in the hand of how much. And we programmed the CRM so that night they would get a text message of, just a reminder, you're only supposed to put this one on tonight. This is how much you do, and this is what it looks like. The next morning, they got the same thing. And for 7 days, it was a certain pattern. And on day 7, it was switched to their full skincare. And so we changed it, holding their hands. And when we talked to them, the next time they would come in, they were just blown away that I can't believe that you did all of this stuff. And it cost nothing. It was a one-time expense. And it was such a different delivery of execution. And it's just because we cared enough to make it different. Actually, we cared enough to listen and solve the problem that we were facing, that, we have to cancel their treatment because they didn't listen to the instructions. Well, then how can we do this differently? And, these are the fun things you can do. And it's kind of it's limitless when you realize what you can do. And it's kind of fun. And you can create these very nuanced things that deliver information in a way that is needed, if you understand that there's a gap in the current average of your industry.
I love it, 100%. And your last point, that it's literally limitless the ways you can charm your clients. Like literally, I've never heard anyone other than me put funny names into passwords and crazy things that I invented. There's endless opportunities for charming people. I love it.
And relating to them and making it fun and making the boring stuff fun. Yeah.
And lots of variations, that also listening to them, etc. And not when it gets endlessly complex. And as you point out, interesting, because it's not just listening to them, it's listening to them and making them feel like they were listened to.
Oh man, the perception is everything, isn't it? That's really what it is. It's
exactly
not that's it. They have to understand that.
I've known too many companies no, we actually really incorporate feedback. We have analyses of all the feed calls, and then that goes into our system, to create tickets for the software that are then prioritized by the number of people that asked for it. I'm like, do the people know you're doing that? No, we did automatic analysis. And no, it's not just listening to them; it's knowing you listen to them. There are all these variations of it. It is fun to figure it out. That's why I like being a marketer.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. It's funny because there's such an industry gets ingrained with its standardized processes, and it's so easy to disrupt. And it's right there. It's you expect the same thing every time you walk into a restaurant. You're expecting the same thing, the same how you doing, the same process. In my industry, it was exactly the same. And so the consultation, the perceived value, it's just, it's free. Everyone offers a free consultation. Well, it has no inherent value if it's always considered to be free. But if you deliver it differently, if you say that, you sell them on the package, and then you say, hey, here's a $200 consultation with a doctor or specialist, and we are going to include this, and now your price goes inflated, but it's now seemingly discounted. So as opposed to discounting from the standard price, you are able to communicate the perception of all the value points, the personalized skincare, all of the stuff. So I work with the doctors that they just do these standard things to just give it away. I was like, if you give it away without them understanding what they got, then you're wasting your time. But inversely, you could still give it away for free if you have communicated the value that you're giving away for free. And it's a completely different outcome and response from that client.
1000%. To wrap up two things. First, and as a fun example of every little thing is marketing, I'll wrap it back to the very beginning of our call, where when I asked you what you were drinking, and you made a comment along the lines of, "Oh yeah, your scheduling form made it clear that we needed to be a drink." I want to point out my scheduling form for the podcast, as you notice, has these like weird, fun questions. What kind of conversations you like to have? What drink? And so on. Like no other podcast in the universe does anything like that. So even the scheduling form that for everyone else is, what time are you available? What's your email address? And the boring stuff is an opportunity. Saying, no, I want to like market to you at that point that this is that Client Hour Series is going to be a different sort of podcast. And I love it that you noticed that and you brought a drink. Most people ignore that and don't bring a drink. So I think
not that I bring a drink, but in Canada, we don't have bourbon right now because of this tariff crisis between our borders. I had to go search out and find, an appropriate one just so I could do this because of that information. You mentioned on the call, you mentioned in the instructions. It was brought up again, I believe, on the reminders for the call.
Yeah, exactly.
The congruency all the way through delivered the message as to why I executed the way I did. And people miss that obvious opportunity. You had my attention and you delivered something that was important.
1000%. So it's a great example of that.
Yeah.
Scott, it's been wonderful having you. So many interesting lessons, different perspective, turning disasters around. I love it. Thank you for your time.
I really appreciate the time, Morgan. I hope your audience gets something out of it that they can do to turn around their nightmare clients, as I probably was. But I had this opportunity. But it's been a real pleasure to chat with you, and I hope to do it again.
I loved it, and everyone who's watching, we hope you've made it to the end, and if so, we hope you've enjoyed it as much as we had. Until next time.